Today's lesson is about types of accommodation. There are some basic types of accommodation, some typical examples of accommodation, but also there are less usual types of accommodation. So let's see. The most usual type of accommodation is a hotel. Hotels can be big or small. They can be located at the seaside, in the city center, near the airport, and in the mountains. So, what is a hotel? It is a building where guests stay in rooms, while there is also a reception, a restaurant, and other facilities. So, what are the facilities? A facility is a place in a hotel made for sports, meetings, eating, and so on. Some examples of hotel facilities are swimming pool, gym, meeting rooms, bars, restaurants. Sometimes, if we talk about big hotels, we call them resort. So, what is a resort? A resort is a place where many people go for rest or sport. So, some examples are a tourist resort, a holiday resort, a seaside or beach resort, a ski resort. Resort is basically a place, so it can be a kind of village or town, uh, or a group of hotels near the seaside or in the mountains. But sometimes only one big hotel is called a resort. So we see that large hotels with lots of facilities can be called resorts or resort hotels. A different type of a hotel is something we call a hotel chain. A group of hotels with the same owner is called a hotel chain. Their design is standard. Mostly, they serve the needs of business travelers, but of course, everyone can stay in a hotel chain. Some famous hotel chains are Hilton Hotels, Marriott International, Intercontinental Hotel Group, Best Western, Global Hyatt, and so on. Lots of hotels that belong to a hotel chain can be found in the city centers, in the capitals of countries. People trust these places because they know that the standard is uniform. It means it is the same in all the countries, and also the design of the hotel is standard, so they know exactly what to expect in a room or what kind of food they will be served. A different type of hotel is a boutique hotel. It is a relatively small hotel which has a specific design and high level service. So you see that these hotels are not so standard, typical. They have a unique style. Boutique hotels have from 10 to around 100 rooms. Then they can be placed in a traditional house, as you can see in the photo, or in a luxurious villa. And guests like to stay there because of the nice atmosphere, which is different from the standard atmosphere in the chain hotels. A hostel is something like a cheap hotel. It is usually planned for young backpackers, hikers, or cyclists. Hikers are people who go for a long walk in the countryside, and backpackers are people who travel with a large rucksack on their backs, and they usually visit a few countries to get some experience about some region. What about the things that you can find in a hostel? A hostel usually has bunk beds and shared bathrooms. So, what are bunk beds? Bunk beds are what you can see in the photo, beds fixed one on top of the other. It is very practical to have bunk beds in the rooms because it saves space. Guests in a hostel can sometimes have one meal, such as breakfast, but it is usually something simple, such as pizza, sandwiches, cold meat, and salad. Sometimes they can use a shared kitchen where they can use the fridge, cooker, they can find some sugar or salt, but of course they will buy the other ingredients for their meals. People who work in a hostel are usually very friendly and the atmosphere is informal. A similar type of accommodation, which is very simple, is called a motel. A motel is a roadside hotel designed primarily for motorists, for people who drive a car or a motorbike, and with parking directly outside. So it's suitable to stay there because it's near the main roads. An apartment is a flat rented to tourists. You can see that at the seaside, for example, tourists can rent apartments where they prepare their own food. There is no reception, but they stay in a nicely equipped flat. Many Serbian tourists who go to Greece decide to stay in apartments rather than hotels because it is cheaper and you have a certain freedom. Another type of accommodation is a flat that you can rent, but which is very luxurious and located on the top floor of a tall building. So this type of flat that you can rent is called a penthouse. And the definition says that a penthouse is a luxurious flat on the top floor of a tall building. For people who love camping, there is a possibility to stay in a caravan, which is a wheeled vehicle that has beds and kitchen and can be pulled by a car. In the USA, caravans are called trailers. Another more luxurious option is to rent or maybe even buy a motorhome, which is a large vehicle where travelers can sleep, cook, have a shower, etc. There are various names, different names for a motorhome. So in the UK, you can hear the name motorhome, while in the USA, you will hear the expression recreational vehicle or RV. Sometimes in the UK, they can also call it camper van. A tent is a shelter made of canvas that you can fold up and carry with you. It is very suitable for holidays in summer, in the mountains, in the forests, and sometimes it is considered romantic to stay in a tent, to sit next to the campfire, and so on. Teepee tents are circular tents that were typical of the Indians back in history, but today tents of the same shape are rented to tourists, and especially families with kids find it interesting to stay in teepee tents. A bungalow is a simple house with one level rented to tourists. Very often, there are several bungalows that look the same that are placed in the same place and where tourists stay. A cottage is a small romantic house in the countryside that tourists can rent. People stay there because they like to be in contact with nature, but also with a beautiful atmosphere of a traditional house. A chalet is a small wooden house found in mountain areas, especially in Switzerland. It is made of wood and it is used by people on holiday. Especially in Britain, but also in some other countries, you can see a type of accommodation which is called bed and breakfast or B&B. So what is B&B? Bed and breakfast is a type of accommodation offering bed and breakfast, usually in a private house. B&Bs normally accommodate no more than 6 guests. You can count on very good food. Probably you will be served traditional breakfast, and the owners of the B&B will give you advice on what to see in the town or in the village. They will be very friendly with you, talk to you, and you will feel like you are at home or like if you visited some friends. So people like to stay in B&Bs because the atmosphere is not formal like in a hotel. They feel comfortable and they can talk to the owners who are local people and get some advice on what to do, what to see. A guest house is a private house turned into accommodation point. It is very similar to a B&B, but you do not have breakfast necessarily. So that is something like a very small hotel or a house for rent, and owners can live next door or in one part of that house. In Britain, sometimes you can see a type of accommodation called an inn. So this is a bed and breakfast accommodation within a traditional inn, which is a kind of traditional restaurant or pub. The bar and restaurant is open to the public, so everyone can come, and provides food at lunchtime and in the evening. So some guests stay in their rooms while everyone can come and have a lunch or dinner in an inn. A manor house is a large house on an estate. It is usually a kind of historical house, and many manor houses today are small hotels. A villa is a luxurious house in the countryside or at the seaside that tourists can rent. You can find a villa in all European countries, in Italy, in France, and so on. Some villas are old, historical, while the others are modern. A mansion is a very large luxurious house, a villa, and actually this name is synonymous to the word villa. A stately home is a palace in the countryside owned by a rich family, and now many are turned into hotels and sometimes rented for wedding celebrations or some other type of celebration. That can last for a few days, of course, because it is usually a kind of hotel. Finally, which type of accommodation do you like the best? Explore different types of accommodation in England, Scotland, and Wales. Try to find different types of accommodation with the names Manor House or mansion or inn in their name. Which type of accommodation would you like to own? In which type of accommodation would you like to work?